Growth becomes inevitable the moment learning turns into a daily habit rather than an occasional effort. This video breaks down 10 powerful chapters designed to help you educate yourself every single day, building routines, using micro-learning, turning idle moments into lessons, studying with focused systems, reinforcing memory, choosing curated resources, expanding topics, applying knowledge, tracking progress, and protecting consistency with simple habits. By the end, you'll know exactly how to grow smarter, stronger, and more capable, one day at a time. Subscribe to Audiobook every day for life-changing audiobooks that fuel your mind and elevate your future daily. Number 1. Build a daily self-education routine. A routine becomes powerful the moment it stops feeling like an obligation and starts becoming part of who a person is. Building a daily self-education routine is not about cramming information or trying to impress anyone. It is about choosing every single day to become a little wiser than yesterday. Growth rarely arrives in dramatic bursts. It comes quietly through consistent attention to the mind, and the people who seem to accumulate clarity, confidence, and capability over the years are usually the ones who made learning a small but non-negotiable part of life. A routine like this is not a luxury, it is a form of self-respect. It signals to the world and to oneself that the mind is worth strengthening. A person does not need perfect conditions to start. Life will always present distractions, noise, and excuses that feel convincing. But the truth is simple. Education becomes a daily practice when it becomes a deliberate choice, not a spontaneous event. It begins by carving out a space in the day that belongs to learning and protecting it the way one protects important commitments. The moment this habit forms, even in its simplest version, something inside begins to shift. The mind stops drifting through the world and starts engaging with it. A daily self-education routine works best when it is small enough to complete, meaningful enough to matter, and consistent enough to build momentum. A routine that drains energy will collapse. A routine that inspires will expand. It can begin with 10 minutes of reading, a few minutes of listening to something enriching, or a brief reflection on a new idea. The size of the session is less important than the commitment to do it every day. Growth compounds just like savings. A tiny deposit made daily becomes a fortune of knowledge in the long run. Many people assume they need massive blocks of time to learn meaningfully. They wait for the perfect morning, the perfect schedule, or the perfect motivation. But motivation is unreliable, and waiting for the perfect moment is simply another form of avoidance. A stronger foundation comes from ritual. A ritual becomes automatic. It does not require constant negotiation with the mind. Once set, it guides behavior. The person no longer asks, "Should I learn today?" The answer is always yes, because it is part of the day, like waking, eating, or brushing teeth. That is where transformation begins, not in bursts of effort, but in steady, disciplined rhythm. Designing a daily self-education routine begins with clarity. A person must know what they want to learn, why it matters, and how it fits into their life. Without clarity, the routine becomes directionless. Set a simple intention to grow into a wiser, more capable version of yourself. Then choose the subjects that support that intention. It might be personal development, communication, finance, leadership, psychology, or anything that adds meaning to one's ambitions. Once the direction is chosen, the mind gains an anchor. The routine no longer feels random, it feels purposeful. A strong routine has a beginning cue, something that signals to the brain that it is time to switch into learning mode. It could be making tea, sitting in a certain spot, opening a specific notebook, or turning on an audiobook at the same time each day. The cue matters because the brain loves patterns. A reliable starting point reduces resistance. The moment the cue appears, the mind naturally shifts into education mode. The next step is choosing the medium that fits the person's lifestyle. Some learn best by reading slowly and reflecting deeply. Some prefer audiobooks because they allow learning while moving. Others gain clarity through writing down insights and forming their own thoughts. A person should choose the medium they can sustain daily, not the one that seems impressive to others. Sustainability beats intensity. 10 minutes repeated every day creates more growth than 2 hours done once a week. Practicality matters. A daily self-education routine works best when it fits seamlessly into the life a person already has. If mornings are chaotic, the routine belongs at night. If nights are exhausting, place the routine in the early hours. Some people learn during commutes, some during breaks, some right before bed. There is no perfect time, only a chosen time, and once it is chosen, it must be honored. Another important element is environment. A quiet corner, good light, a comfortable seat, or even a desk with a single notebook can create a sense of intention. A clear environment clears the mind. If the mind associates a particular space with learning, the routine strengthens. This space does not need to be beautiful or elaborate. It only needs to be consistent, a place where the noise of the world softens enough for the mind to think. A person should also decide how they want to capture what they learn. Knowledge dissolves quickly when it stays only in the mind. Writing down key insights is not busy work, it is reinforcement. Even a few sentences per day can turn scattered information into practical wisdom. A short reflection turns a lesson into understanding. And understanding is the true purpose of education. The goal is not to memorize, the goal is to internalize. As the routine settles in, the mind will start to crave learning. This is one of the greatest rewards. What once felt like a discipline becomes a source of strength and calm. Learning grounds a person. It gives structure to the day and meaning to the mind. The world feels less chaotic because the mind has direction. Each day's effort becomes a reminder of who the person is trying to become. Challenges will appear. There will be days when the motivation is low, when distractions multiply, when stress pulls attention elsewhere. These are the days that test the routine's foundation. And these are the days that matter most. A single session on a difficult day strengthens the identity of the learner more than any session done in comfort. Growth happens when discipline holds steady in discomfort. It is important to forgive imperfect days. Education is a lifelong journey, not a race. Missing a day does not erase progress, unless it leads to quitting. The routine should be flexible enough to continue even in busy seasons. A shorter session is still a session. A slower pace is still progress. What matters is continuation, not perfection. As the routine grows, something deeper begins to shift. The person becomes more aware, more curious, more thoughtful. They begin noticing patterns in conversations, opportunities in challenges, and lessons in everyday experiences. Learning sharpens perception. A mind trained daily becomes calmer, wiser, and more capable of navigating life's complexities. This is the true reward of a self-education routine. It shapes not just knowledge, but character. A powerful addition to the routine is intentional exposure to ideas that challenge one's assumptions. Growth does not come from comfort. A person should incorporate materials that stretch their thinking, expand their worldview, or introduce unfamiliar concepts. This prevents stagnation and keeps the mind alive. A balanced diet of ideas, some reinforcing, some challenging, makes the routine more dynamic and enriching. One of the most empowering realizations is that a daily self-education routine does not require perfect focus every single time. Even on days when the mind wanders or the attention feels scattered, the act of showing up reinforces the identity of someone committed to growth. Identity drives behavior. When a person believes they are a learner, they behave like one. And daily repetition is how that identity forms. Over time, the routine becomes more than a habit. It becomes an anchor. It centers the person when life becomes stressful. It offers clarity during confusion. It provides strength during uncertainty. Education becomes a form of self-protection, a shield against ignorance, fear, and stagnation. When the mind grows, everything in life rises with it. The most powerful transformation comes when a person realizes that learning is not simply something they do. It is something they are. A daily self-education routine is the quiet path to mastery, and mastery is built in silence long before it is seen by others. Each day's effort becomes a brick in the foundation of a stronger mind. In the end, building a daily self-education routine is a commitment to personal evolution. It is a promise to the future self that the mind will not be neglected. It is a declaration that growth is a priority, not an afterthought. This routine may begin small, but it leads to a life enriched with wisdom, clarity, and confidence, qualities that no one can take away. The first step is simple. Choose a time, choose a medium, and show up every day. Over weeks, the routine grows stronger. Over months, the mind becomes sharper. Over years, the entire life transforms. And all of it begins with this one discipline, the willingness to educate oneself daily, no matter what the world demands, no matter how busy the schedule becomes. A person who chooses to learn every day becomes unstoppable because wisdom becomes their greatest ally and their most reliable guide. Number 2. Use micro-learning to boost knowledge. Micro-learning thrives on one simple truth. The mind absorbs information more effectively in small, intentional doses than it does through long, draining sessions. A person doesn't need endless hours to grow wiser each day. They only need moments used with purpose. Tiny learning sessions might appear insignificant at first glance, yet they accumulate into powerful transformations. The human brain was never designed to process huge chunks of information at once, but it excels at grasping short, focused lessons that can be revisited and applied quickly. This is why micro-learning has become such a powerful tool for anyone who wants consistent growth without overwhelming their schedule. Most people underestimate the value of brief learning moments because they assume progress requires intensity. The reality is far simpler. A 5-minute insight during a commute, a short explanation listened to during lunch, or a compact nugget of wisdom read before bed can shift understanding far more effectively than forcing the mind to absorb too much at once. Micro-learning removes the excuses that often sabotage growth. There is no need to search for long stretches of free time or wait for energy levels to be perfect. Learning becomes a natural part of the small spaces throughout the day. The strength of micro-learning comes from its ability to keep the mind continually engaged. A steady rhythm of small lessons sharpens focus. Each tiny session strengthens the mental habit of curiosity, and curiosity is one of the mind's greatest engines. The person who feeds curiosity daily discovers that learning never feels burdensome. Instead, it feels energizing. Every insight becomes a spark that ignites the desire to understand more. Over time, the collection of small lessons becomes a powerful mental library. One of the greatest advantages of micro-learning is that it adapts to unpredictable days. Life often interrupts long plans, but brief learning moments slip easily into any schedule. A person can learn while waiting in line, while taking a short walk, while preparing a meal, or while winding down at the end of the night. These moments exist naturally in every day. They are simply unused. Micro-learning transforms them into opportunity. Instead of scrolling aimlessly or drifting into mental stillness, those small windows become gateways to new ideas and deeper understanding. Rather than overwhelming the mind, micro-learning respects a natural flow. Each small dose gives the brain enough time to absorb without fatigue. The moment the session ends, the mind receives space to process in the background. This quiet processing is where true comprehension happens. A short lesson might seem brief, but its impact expands as the mind continues thinking about it during the day. A single concept learned in the morning may influence decisions, conversations, or reflections hours later. This ripple effect is one of the hidden strengths of micro-learning. A person can apply micro-learning to any subject. Short clips on effective communication, brief passages on discipline, compact lessons on finance, concise explanations of psychological concepts, or quick breakdowns of life skills. All can fit into small time blocks. The key is consistency, not volume. A few minutes each day directed toward important topics build more mastery than intense sessions that rarely repeat. The brain loves pattern and repetition, and micro-learning delivers both in a gentle, sustainable way. To make micro-learning truly powerful, it helps to choose platforms or sources that offer valuable content in compact form. Audiobooks with short chapters, educational apps, summarized breakdowns of ideas, short articles, or concise videos provide exactly what the micro-learning structure thrives on. What matters most is the quality of information. A single meaningful insight is worth more than a long session filled with scattered ideas. Curated content keeps learning sharp and purposeful. Another strength of micro-learning lies in how it reduces mental resistance. When a task feels huge, the mind hesitates, but when the task is small, the hesitation disappears. 5 minutes feels manageable. 3 minutes feels effortless. Even 1 minute feels possible. This reduction in friction is what allows micro-learning to become a daily habit with minimal effort. The routine becomes automatic. The mind shows up with ease because it knows the session will not drain energy, This ease creates consistency, and consistency creates transformation. Microlearning also works beautifully with reflection. After a short lesson, a person can pause for a few seconds and ask one simple question: how does this apply to my life today? This brief moment of reflection turns information into wisdom. When the mind connects new knowledge with real experiences, the lesson becomes part of the person's thinking. It no longer sits on the surface, it integrates. This integration is the foundation of personal evolution. A powerful technique for enriching microlearning is rotation. Instead of studying the same subject every day, a person can rotate topics throughout the week. One day might focus on communication skills, another on mental strength, another on personal finance, another on emotional awareness, and another on discipline. Rotation keeps the mind engaged and prevents monotony. Each topic gets consistent attention without overwhelming the brain with too much of one subject at once. Over time, this creates well-rounded growth. Microlearning also teaches the discipline of intentional focus. Because the sessions are brief, they require full attention. This strengthens the ability to concentrate deeply, even for short bursts. In a world filled with distractions, the skill of focused attention is invaluable. The person who can concentrate fully, even for small periods, gains clarity and control over their mind. Learning becomes sharper because the mind becomes sharper. The beauty of microlearning is that it plants seeds. A seed is small, yet capable of growing into something powerful. Each tiny lesson deposits a new seed into the mind. Some seeds become ideas that shift perspective. Some become habits that improve daily life. Some become breakthroughs that alter the course of one's future. Microlearning ensures these seeds are planted often enough for growth to become continuous rather than occasional. Over weeks and months, a person who practices microlearning experiences a quiet transformation. They begin to recall insights naturally in conversations. They find themselves responding to situations with more wisdom. They notice improvements in confidence, clarity, and problem solving. They start recognizing opportunities that were previously invisible. They become more articulate, more aware, more capable. What began as a few minutes a day becomes a new level of mental strength and maturity. One of the most profound aspects of microlearning is its ability to create momentum. Small actions performed daily create a sense of progress. Progress builds motivation. Motivation strengthens discipline. Discipline reinforces identity. A person who engages in microlearning every day begins to see themselves as someone committed to growth. Identity determines behavior. Behavior determines destiny. Microlearning becomes far more than a technique. It becomes a gateway to continuous personal evolution. The most empowering part of this practice is its simplicity. No complex system is required. No elaborate plan is needed. All a person must do is use the small pockets of time in their day to feed their mind with something meaningful. With each micro-lesson, the mind sharpens, perspective deepens, and inner strength grows. Growth becomes effortless because it is woven into the natural rhythm of daily life. The commitment to micro-learning is the commitment to never let a day pass without becoming a little wiser. This approach honors the value of time and respects the potential of the mind. Knowledge is not something to chase in rare moments. It is something to cultivate daily. And with micro-learning, anyone, no matter how busy, overwhelmed, or distracted, can consistently move toward a wiser, stronger, more capable version of themselves. Number 3. Turn idle time into learning. Idle time often slips through life unnoticed, appearing harmless, yet carrying tremendous potential when used with intention. These small pockets, waiting in line, sitting in traffic, standing in an elevator, walking from one place to another, seem insignificant, but together they form hours of unused opportunity. When a person chooses to transform these scattered moments into learning, they gain an advantage that compounds quietly. Nothing feels forced, nothing disrupts the flow of the day, and yet growth continues moving forward. Instead of allowing idle time to dissolve into distraction, it becomes a silent partner in personal development. Most people treat idle moments as mental off switches. They grab the nearest distraction, scroll without direction, or drift into thoughtless loops. It's not that these habits are malicious, but they rob the mind of a chance to evolve. Humans are surrounded by information, yet rarely make room for intentional learning in the small gaps of the day. Reclaiming idle time changes that. It turns life into a continuous classroom, where the lessons come naturally and effortlessly. Using idle time for learning doesn't require pressure or intensity. It requires awareness. Awareness of how often these gaps appear. Awareness of how they can either be wasted or utilized. The first step is noticing how much idle time exists throughout the day. At first it seems minimal, but once attention sharpens, those moments appear everywhere. A few seconds before a meeting begins, a lull in conversation, time spent waiting for food to finish cooking, moments when the hands are busy but the mind is free. Each one offers a chance to absorb something meaningful. When these moments are reclaimed, learning becomes woven into everyday life. It no longer relies on long schedules or strict routines. Instead, it flows naturally. A person can listen to a short chapter while tying their shoes, replay a profound idea while walking outside, or reflect on a new insight while waiting for a bus. These small acts turn idle time into a stream of micro-opportunities that sharpen the mind. Over weeks, the difference becomes noticeable. Over months, the difference becomes undeniable. Idle time learning works because it doesn't exhaust the mind. There's no feeling of being overloaded or pressured. These moments are naturally quiet and open, so the mind absorbs information more smoothly. Even a small lesson can ignite curiosity. That curiosity builds momentum, and momentum leads to consistent learning. Instead of fighting for motivation, the person follows a gentle rhythm that feels effortless and sustainable. This is one of the greatest strengths of turning idle time into learning. It eliminates friction and removes excuses. Another benefit lies in how idle time learning strengthens the habit of purposeful attention. Each time a person chooses to learn during a quiet moment, they reinforce the belief that their time has value. Idle time becomes something to appreciate, not something to kill. This shift in mindset builds discipline. It strengthens the sense of agency. It teaches the mind to remain alert, not passive. Over time, the person becomes more intentional in other parts of life as well, because awareness deepens and clarity sharpens. Technology makes this practice even more accessible. Audiobooks, short educational clips, summaries, language learning apps, thought-provoking articles, and compact lessons can be accessed anywhere. The key is keeping meaningful content ready to use. When content is readily available, learning becomes immediate. There's no need for preparation or planning. A person simply opens their source and immerses themselves in something worthwhile. This readiness removes hesitation and makes the habit easier to maintain. Idle time learning can also be expanded beyond consuming information. It can become a space for inner reflection. Thinking intentionally is a form of learning. Reflecting on a principle heard earlier, analyzing a personal pattern, or recalling a useful insight deepens the understanding. These moments allow the mind to connect new knowledge with real experiences. Reflection strengthens memory and understanding, turning knowledge into wisdom. It becomes a private conversation with oneself, making growth personal and meaningful. Another powerful use of idle time is practicing skills mentally. Visualization, silent rehearsing, recalling steps, refining ideas, all of these activities train the brain. Athletes, leaders, and highly disciplined individuals use idle time this way. They rehearse responses, visualize success, or mentally walk through solutions. This practice sharpens the mind and prepares it for real-life challenges. Instead of drifting, the mind moves with purpose, and the habit of mental strengthening becomes natural. Idle time learning also helps reduce the feeling of chaos. When a person uses these moments with intention, they develop a calm sense of control over their day. Even when the schedule is full, there is always space to grow. This creates a sense of progress that uplifts the spirit. Progress, no matter how small, fuels confidence. Confidence fuels discipline. Discipline fuels long-term transformation. What begins as a small habit becomes a powerful foundation for lifelong learning. To make this practice strong, the person can start by identifying the types of idle time they experience most often. Commutes, chores, waiting periods, transitions, each one becomes a consistent anchor point for learning. Using these moments repeatedly builds a rhythm. The mind becomes conditioned to shift into learning mode during these pockets. This conditioning transforms idle time from passive to productive. Another helpful approach is to create categories of content matched to different types of idle time. Short lessons for brief moments, longer sessions for commutes, reflective thinking for quiet pauses, skill practice for morning transitions. Matching the content to the moment ensures that learning feels natural, not forced. When the structure fits life, the habit becomes unbreakable. Idle time learning also guards the mind from negative influences. When idle moments are filled with distraction or mindless consumption, the mind becomes scattered and restless. But when those moments contain something meaningful, the mind remains steady and alert. The quality of thoughts improves. The inner dialogue becomes more constructive. A mind fed wisely develops resilience, clarity, and composure. Over time, the accumulation of these tiny learning sessions creates a noticeable shift in intelligence and awareness. The person becomes more articulate, more thoughtful, and more perceptive. They begin speaking with greater clarity. They make decisions more confidently. Their worldview expands because they've gathered insights from countless small lessons. This transformation happens quietly, without struggle, driven by simple choices made throughout each day. The impact becomes obvious in conversation, problem-solving, and daily challenges. Others notice the growth, even if they can't pinpoint the source. What they see is a person who continues to evolve, a person whose mind remains vibrant. While many allow idle time to slip away unnoticed, the person who uses it intentionally carries an invisible advantage. Knowledge grows quietly, but steadily, forming a foundation that supports every part of life. The beauty of turning idle time into learning is that it doesn't demand sacrifice. It doesn't require dramatic changes or strict routines. It simply asks for awareness and intention. Idle time already exists. It's already part of every day. Choosing to use it wisely transforms it from disposable to valuable, from empty to enriching. This practice becomes one of the most reliable sources of personal growth. It ensures that no matter how busy life becomes, learning continues. No matter how stressful the day feels, progress remains possible. No matter how unpredictable the schedule is, the mind keeps expanding. Every moment becomes meaningful, because every moment holds potential. The person who turns idle time into learning becomes unstoppable in quiet ways. Their growth becomes steady, their mind becomes sharper, and their life gradually rises to a higher level. All because they chose to treat their idle moments as opportunities rather than interruptions. This simple habit, practiced consistently, leads to a lifetime of continuous development and inner strength. Number 4. Study smarter, with focused systems. Studying smarter begins with understanding that the mind thrives on structure, clarity, and intention. A focused system gives direction to the learning process, eliminating the scattered approach that so often leads to frustration and wasted effort. Many people dive into new topics with enthusiasm, but lose momentum because their method lacks order. The information piles up, the mind becomes overwhelmed, and progress slows. A focused system solves this by creating a reliable path that guides learning step by step. It doesn't depend on motivation or bursts of energy. It relies on discipline, simplicity, and consistency. With a system in place, the mind becomes sharper, retention improves, and every learning session becomes more effective. A focused system begins with defining a clear purpose. The mind learns best when it knows why it is learning something. A strong purpose gives the brain a target to lock onto. It cuts through distractions and helps filter out unnecessary information. When the purpose is defined, the person no longer absorbs content randomly. They study with intention. Every session becomes part of a larger direction. Purpose turns learning from a vague desire into a structured pursuit. Once the direction is set, the learning process gains strength and momentum. The next part of a focus system is creating a set sequence. Without sequence, the mind jumps around, collecting pieces that don't connect. When information lacks order, it dissolves quickly. But when learning follows a sequence, each new concept builds upon the last, forming a strong foundation. This prevents confusion and allows the mind to grasp complex ideas more easily. A sequence also makes it easier to measure progress. Instead of feeling lost in endless information, the person sees exactly where they are and what comes next. This clarity makes learning more enjoyable and less stressful. Another important part of focused systems is eliminating unnecessary tasks. Most people overcomplicate their learning with too many tools, too many notes, or too many resources. They try to learn everything at once and end up retaining very little. A focused system strips away the excess and concentrates on what matters. It trains the mind to prioritize. Instead of drowning in information, the learner focuses on the core ideas that create mastery. When the mind deals with fewer distractions, it processes information more deeply and more quickly. One of the most powerful elements of studying smarter is using time blocks. Short, concentrated bursts of learning are more effective than long, unfocused sessions. Time blocks help the mind stay alert and engaged. They also prevent burnout. When a person sets a specific block of time, whether it's 20 minutes or 40, the brain knows it only needs to focus for that duration. This creates mental alertness and reduces resistance. Time blocks also allow learning to fit naturally into daily life. Instead of needing long stretches of free time, the person uses manageable segments that repeat consistently. Another key part of a focused system is using active engagement rather than passive consumption. Passive learning feels comfortable because it requires less effort, but it also produces weaker results. Active engagement challenges the mind to interact with the material, asking questions, summarizing ideas, explaining concepts out loud, or writing brief reflections all deepen understanding. When the mind is forced to work with the information, it becomes more invested. Active learning turns information into knowledge and knowledge into personal insight. Focus systems also depend on reviewing information at spaced intervals. The mind forgets quickly, unless the information is revisited at the right time. Spaced repetition reinforces memory by bringing concepts back just as they start to fade. This strengthens recall and builds long-term retention. Instead of trying to memorize everything in one session, the person returns to the material in small doses across days or weeks. This method respects the brain's natural rhythm and makes learning more efficient. Another powerful strategy is applying what is learned as soon as possible. Application cements understanding. The more the material is used, the deeper it becomes rooted. Even small actions count. A conversation using a new idea, a decision informed by a new concept, or a short practice session. Application transforms abstract knowledge into practical skill. A focused system always includes a space for real-world implementation. It reminds the learner that knowledge is not meant to stay in books. It is meant to shape actions, habits, and perspectives. A focused system also requires reducing the noise around the learning process. The physical environment plays a significant role. A clean, organized space helps the mind stay centered. A cluttered environment sends distractions into the mind, pulling attention away from the learning material. Simplifying the surroundings strengthens focus. The mind performs best when the environment supports clarity rather than chaos. Even small adjustments, removing unused items, turning off notifications, or choosing a quiet corner, make a big difference. Another valuable technique is breaking larger topics into small milestones. Large subjects can feel intimidating, but breaking them down makes them manageable. Every milestone achieved gives a sense of progress. This progress builds confidence and keeps motivation alive. When the mind sees that learning is moving forward, step by step, it stops fearing the challenge. Small milestones transform overwhelming tasks into achievable goals. This approach makes studying smarter because it aligns the learning process with how the mind naturally understands and absorbs information. Focused systems also benefit from tracking growth. When progress is recorded, it becomes visible. The mind responds positively to visible progress. It reinforces discipline and strengthens commitment. Tracking growth doesn't require complex tools. A simple list of completed lessons, short reflections, or a brief record of new insights is enough. The purpose is not perfection, it is awareness. Awareness deepens understanding and gives meaning to the effort being invested. It turns learning into a journey rather than a scattered activity. Another essential aspect of studying smarter is protecting the learning space from interruptions. Constant switching between tasks weakens concentration. Every interruption forces the mind to rebuild focus, wasting mental energy. A focused system guards against this by creating boundaries around study time. The learner communicates clearly, shuts down distractions, and commits to being fully present. This strengthens mental discipline and creates a powerful sense of control over the learning process. One of the most overlooked elements of studying smarter is recognizing internal resistance. The mind sometimes resists learning because it prefers comfort. A focused system counters this by creating habits that bypass resistance. Instead of waiting for motivation, the learner follows the system. Systems remain consistent even when emotions shift. This reliability builds strength, discipline, and mastery. Over time, resistance weakens because the behavior becomes familiar and automatic. Focused systems also teach the importance of depth over quantity. Learning many things superficially creates the illusion of progress, but produces little understanding. Studying fewer things deeply creates real transformation. Depth shapes character. Depth strengthens judgment. Depth builds expertise. When the learner commits to depth, the mind gains clarity that cannot be shaken by surface-level knowledge. A focused system honors depth by limiting distractions and emphasizing mastery. Over time, studying smarter reshapes the way the mind operates. It strengthens attention, sharpens memory, and builds a disciplined approach to learning. It transforms the process from scattered effort into intentional progress. A person who studies with focused systems becomes more efficient, more confident, and more capable. Their learning becomes a long-term asset rather than a temporary activity. Their mind becomes a highly organized space where ideas connect smoothly and insights emerge naturally. This approach to learning empowers a person to grow continuously. It ensures that every session contributes meaningfully to their evolution. It grounds them in purpose, strengthens their discipline, and elevates their potential. Studying smarter with focused systems is not just a technique, it is a philosophy, a way of honoring time, intention, and the power of a trained mind. Number 5. Strengthen memory through daily review. Memory becomes stronger when it's revisited with intention, not force, and daily review turns new information into something familiar, usable, and deeply understood. Each day offers a chance to reinforce what you've learned so your mind stops treating knowledge as something temporary and starts recognizing it as something worth keeping. A consistent review habit trains your brain to hold on to details that matter, to connect them with past lessons, and to retrieve them effortlessly when needed. Without regular reinforcement, even the most valuable insights fade, leaving only fragments behind. But with steady repetition, knowledge gains structure, clarity, and permanence. Daily review doesn't require long study sessions or complicated methods. What it needs is rhythm, small, predictable cycles that strengthen recall and reduce mental clutter. The human mind is naturally forgetful, but it's also remarkably adaptive. When something is seen or thought about repeatedly, the brain marks it as important. The pathways become easier to access, the information becomes easier to apply, and learning feels less like effort and more like natural flow. This is why reviewing for just a few minutes each day can outperform hours of cramming. The brain thrives on spaced reminders, and each repetition turns a loose idea into a reliable tool. A powerful way to begin strengthening memory is to end each day by revisiting what you've learned. This simple practice signals to your mind that the lesson isn't finished, that the information deserves a higher priority. As you pause to reflect, you can capture the main points, summarize them in your own words, and solidify their meaning. You're not forcing memorization, you're reinforcing relevance. When your brain sees material twice within a short window, recall improves dramatically. This small nightly ritual can turn scattered learning into a structured body of knowledge that grows with each passing day. Another way to anchor memories is to connect new information with concepts you already understand. The mind remembers through association, not isolation. When a new idea is linked to something familiar, it becomes part of a larger network, making it easier to retrieve later. This turns daily review into an opportunity to form deeper associations, to notice patterns, and to integrate lessons across different subjects. Instead of treating learning as individual pieces, you begin to see how everything connects. These mental bridges transform knowledge from temporary impressions into lasting understanding that becomes useful in real situations. Repetition becomes more effective when you engage multiple senses or formats during review. Some days you might listen to an audiobook summary, other days you might read notes, and occasionally you might rewrite key ideas or teach them to someone else. Each method activates a different part of the brain, creating multiple pathways to the same piece of information. Multisensory exposure strengthens retention far more than passive review. When something is heard, seen, spoken, and applied in different contexts, it becomes part of your long-term memory in a durable way that resists fading. A helpful strategy is to use short review cycles throughout the day. You might revisit the material once in the morning, again during a midday break, and once more before sleep. These small refreshers take only minutes, yet they create a powerful reinforcement loop that locks knowledge into place. The spacing between each reminder helps the brain consolidate what it has learned, turning repetition into a memory-building engine. These cycles are especially helpful when you're learning complex ideas, new skills, or vocabulary that requires precise recall. Daily review also becomes more effective when you practice retrieval instead of just rereading. Reading information can create a false sense of familiarity, making you think you know it better than you actually do. Retrieval forces your brain to actively recall the material without seeing it, strengthening the neural pathways responsible for memory. Even a simple practice of closing your eyes and summarizing the main points in your own words can significantly increase retention. Retrieval turns knowledge into something active, something your brain can access quickly and confidently. Another powerful way to strengthen memory is to apply the information in real scenarios. When you use what you've learned, the brain recognizes the material as relevant to your life. Application transforms theory into lived experience, which your mind remembers far more vividly. This might mean discussing an idea with someone, practicing a technique, solving a problem using a new concept, or adjusting your behavior based on what you learned. Each act of application becomes its own form of review, deepening understanding and making the knowledge more durable. You can also build stronger memory through deliberate note refinement. Instead of keeping your notes static, revisit them and rewrite the core ideas more simply and clearly. The act of reorganizing information forces your mind to interact with it again, strengthening comprehension and recall. Cleaner notes make future reviews more efficient, and the refinement process helps you understand the material in your own voice. Over time, your notes evolve from raw information into a personalized knowledge system you can rely on. Sleep plays a vital role in daily memory reinforcement. During rest, your brain consolidates the information you reviewed and organizes it into long-term storage. This is why an evening review session can dramatically improve retention the next day. You're giving your brain clear signals about what to keep. Even 5 minutes before bed can make a difference. When you combine sleep with consistent review, you create an environment where learning becomes easier and faster, and where information remains available long after you first encounter it. Daily review becomes even more powerful when you eliminate distractions during your study moments. A focused mind encodes information far more effectively than one divided between tasks. When your attention is undivided, the brain can process details more deeply, making them easier to remember later. This doesn't require long periods of silence or strict conditions. Even a few minutes of intentional focus creates stronger memory impressions than hours of distracted learning. Quality of attention multiplies the effects of daily repetition. Tracking what you review each day can boost motivation and make the process feel more meaningful. When you see your progress laid out, notes growing, summaries improving, key concepts becoming clearer, you develop a sense of momentum. This momentum keeps you engaged, makes you more consistent, and encourages you to keep expanding your knowledge. Progress tracking doesn't have to be elaborate. Even simple tools like a checklist or short reflection can help. The more you see your growth, the more committed you become to reinforcing your memory. Finally, daily review becomes a long-term advantage when you treat it as a lifestyle, not a chore. When you build the habit of revisiting ideas regularly, learning stops feeling like a challenge and starts feeling like a natural part of your day. You develop a sense of clarity, recall becomes easier, and information stays fresh instead of fading into the background. This commitment to daily reinforcement builds a powerful memory over time, a memory that supports your goals, strengthens your confidence, and gives you a sharper, more capable mind. Daily review is not about perfection or pressure. It's about creating a steady rhythm that supports the way your brain naturally learns. Each repetition leaves a trace, Each reflection deepens understanding, and each day adds another layer to the knowledge you're building. With consistent review, your memory becomes stronger, your thinking becomes sharper, and your ability to learn increases in ways that compound across your entire life. Number 6. Learn faster using curated resources. Learning accelerates when the information you consume is intentionally selected, rather than randomly discovered. Curated resources remove the noise, reduce decision fatigue, and direct your attention toward material that is already refined, relevant, and aligned with the skills you want to build. Instead of wandering from article to article or video to video, you follow a clear path shaped by people who have already separated what is essential from what is distracting. This structure shortens your learning curve because you spend far less time sifting through content and far more time absorbing meaningful knowledge that moves you forward. Curated resources help you focus on quality rather than quantity. A single well-chosen book, course, or podcast can deliver insights that hundreds of scattered clips or posts never will. When you trust the sources you gather, your mind relaxes into a deeper learning mode instead of constantly judging whether something is worth your attention. This shift in focus helps you absorb information more naturally. You stop trying to find the right thing to learn and instead devote your energy to understanding the material in front of you. The path becomes smoother, cleaner, and faster because the decisions have already been made with purpose. The speed of learning increases when information is presented in a logical sequence. Curated resources often provide a structured progression, guiding you from foundational concepts to more advanced ideas without unnecessary detours. This progression prevents gaps in knowledge and keeps you from being overwhelmed by details that don't matter yet. When material flows in a thoughtful order, your brain builds connections more efficiently. Each new idea links to something you've already understood, allowing knowledge to stack and compound. This is how curated paths transform learning from chaotic exploration into steady growth. Another reason curated resources accelerate learning is that they filter out outdated or inaccurate information. The internet is filled with content that contradicts itself, wastes time, or oversimplifies complex topics. When someone with expertise curates materials for you, whether it's a teacher, author, expert, or specialized platform, you avoid confusion and reduce the risk of relying on unreliable information. This clarity sharpens your understanding, lowers frustration, and keeps your mind focused on content that actually reflects how things work. Accuracy becomes a powerful accelerator because it eliminates the mental friction of constantly correcting misconceptions later. Learning faster also becomes easier when curated resources match your learning style. Some people absorb information better visually, while others prefer audio, hands-on practice, or written explanations. Curated learning paths often incorporate multiple formats, allowing you to engage with the material in the way that resonates most. When information enters your mind through your preferred channel, it sticks more quickly and feels easier to recall. This comfort boosts motivation, and motivation fuels consistency, which is one of the strongest forces behind fast learning. A curated collection of resources also saves you from decision overload. Every minute spent searching for content is a minute not spent learning anything meaningful. When you already have a set of trusted materials ready, you can jump directly into learning at any time during breaks, early in the morning, or at night before bed. This eliminates the startup friction that often slows down self-education. The more you streamline the beginning of your study sessions, the more time you spend actually processing and applying new knowledge. This simple shift dramatically increases the total amount of learning you accumulate over weeks and months. Curated resources also expose you to thought leaders who have already condensed years of experience into accessible forms. Books that took authors decades to write, lectures distilled from lifetimes of expertise, and guides shaped by real-world practice allow you to learn in hours what took others years to figure out. This compression of time is one of the greatest advantages curated resources offer. You're not just learning faster, you're skipping the painful process of trial and error that professionals endured on their way to mastery. Their clarity becomes your shortcut. A powerful benefit of curated learning is that it reduces distractions. The online world presents endless choices, and each click leads to another tempting detour. Curated lists remove these temptations by giving you a fixed selection with a clear direction. When you limit your input to a high-quality set, your mind becomes calmer and more focused. This single-minded attention allows you to process information more deeply and recall it more easily. Distraction is the enemy of rapid learning, and curation is one of the simplest ways to weaken that enemy's influence. Another advantage of curated resources is that they help you build deeper expertise in less time. Random learning often results in broad but shallow knowledge. Curated learning guides you through a subject with purpose, encouraging depth instead of scattered surface-level understanding. Depth leads to mastery because it forces you to wrestle with concepts, see patterns, and apply ideas with greater clarity. When you understand the core principles instead of isolated facts, your learning accelerates across every area connected to that subject. You carry the knowledge forward and use it as a foundation for even faster progress. Curated resources can also be updated regularly, ensuring you stay aligned with the most current developments. Fields like technology, psychology, science, and productivity evolve quickly, and staying updated requires consistent effort. Curated platforms or expert-maintained lists remove the burden of constant searching and deliver what matters directly to you. This helps you adapt quickly, avoid outdated thinking, and remain sharp in areas where change is constant. Staying current with minimal effort preserves your mental energy and makes learning a natural part of your daily life. Emotion plays an important role in learning speed, and curated resources often create a more enjoyable experience. When you appreciate the quality of the material you're consuming, you engage with it more enthusiastically. Enjoyment strengthens memory, deepens understanding, and encourages you to stay committed. Curated learning paths frequently include inspiring thinkers, polished presentations, and thoughtfully created content. This elevates your learning environment and reduces the emotional resistance that often appears when material feels dull or scattered. An enjoyable path is a sustainable path, and sustainability is essential for long-term speed. Curated resources also make reflection easier. When you gather material from a consistent set of sources, themes begin to repeat in different forms, reinforcing your understanding. Insights echo across books, conversations, and lessons. This repetition from high-quality perspectives allows your brain to synthesize ideas faster. Reflection becomes natural because you have clarity about what you've consumed and how it relates to what you already know. The more you reflect, the faster your thinking sharpens, and the more easily you can apply what you've learned. The greatest power of curated resources is that they help you build a personal knowledge ecosystem, your own library of insights, lessons, and references that grow over time. This ecosystem becomes a long-term companion in your self-education journey, giving you a reliable source of understanding whenever you need it. When you curate deliberately, you build a knowledge identity that aligns with your values, goals, and ambitions. This personalized approach accelerates learning because it keeps you connected to subjects that matter deeply to you. The stronger the connection, the faster the absorption. By embracing curated resources, you streamline your learning, eliminate unnecessary friction, and immerse yourself in knowledge that's already been refined for clarity and depth. This approach transforms your daily learning into a deliberate practice that compounds over time, helping you grow faster, think more clearly, and develop expertise with confidence and ease. Number 7. Expand thinking with diverse topics. Expanding your thinking begins the moment you allow your mind to explore ideas that fall outside your usual interests. Most people unknowingly trap themselves inside narrow circles of knowledge, returning to the same subjects, the same viewpoints, and the same familiar sources. This habit creates a comfortable but limited mental world. Growth slows, creativity weakens, insight becomes predictable. The mind, however, thrives on contrast. It sharpens when exposed to unfamiliar terrains, when it encounters perspectives that challenge assumptions, and when it absorbs concepts that seem unrelated at first, but ultimately reveal hidden connections. Diverse topics act as sparks that awaken new areas of thought, giving your inner world more texture, curiosity, and depth. A broader range of knowledge gives your mind more tools to work with. Even subjects that seem irrelevant can become catalysts for unexpected breakthroughs. A lesson from biology might clarify something about human behavior. A principle from physics may illuminate a pattern in personal discipline. A story from ancient history can reveal the origins of modern beliefs and help you navigate current challenges more wisely. When you explore diverse topics, You train your mind to make unusual connections. These connections lead to insights that feel fresh and original because they rise from a unique blend of ideas that few people took the time to combine. Diverse learning also strengthens adaptability. Life rarely hands you problems that fit neatly within a single category. Some challenges involve emotion, others logic, and many require understanding people, systems, and yourself all at once. A narrow range of knowledge makes you rigid, forcing you to approach every situation from the same angle. A broad knowledge base gives you mental flexibility. You can shift perspectives when needed, drawing from a wide reservoir of concepts. This ability to move between different ways of thinking helps you navigate uncertainty with more confidence and clarity. Exploring new subjects also keeps your mind active and prevents mental stagnation. When you repeatedly study the same topics, the brain settles into a routine. While routine is valuable for discipline, it can limit curiosity if overused. New topics refresh the mind, stimulating areas that may have been dormant. Each unfamiliar subject introduces fresh patterns, new vocabulary, and different ways of understanding the world. This awakening effect deepens your mental capacity and keeps you intellectually alive, making learning feel energizing rather than repetitive. Another benefit of expanding your thinking with diverse topics is that it helps you see the world with greater nuance. People tend to view issues from the perspective of their own experience. When you learn about fields beyond your immediate interests, you develop empathy for ideas, cultures, and viewpoints that differ from your own. This doesn't require agreeing with everything you encounter. Instead, it strengthens your ability to understand why people think the way they do. This understanding sharpens your judgment and reduces the tendency to react impulsively. With broader insight, your decisions become more grounded, and your interactions become smoother and more thoughtful. Diverse learning also nurtures creativity. Creativity isn't simply the ability to invent new things, it is the art of connecting existing ideas in novel ways. The more you engage with different subjects, the more raw material your mind has to work with. Many innovators, artists, and thinkers owe their breakthroughs to knowledge that seemed unrelated at first glance. They combined ideas from unexpected areas and created something extraordinary. When you broaden your learning, you place yourself in the same position. You give your mind permission to explore, combine, and transform information into new patterns. Creativity becomes a natural byproduct of your expanding intellectual landscape. Venturing into diverse topics also builds resilience. Exposure to different philosophies, sciences, and histories teaches you that the world is vast, unpredictable, and filled with multiple ways of living. When you see how various cultures and thinkers have approached problems, you gain perspective on your own challenges. You realize that adversity is universal, and that many solutions exist beyond the ones you already know. This understanding grounds you emotionally. It strengthens your ability to stay steady when life gives you difficulties, because you've studied countless examples of how others overcame their struggles. Diverse learning gives you inner strength by widening your understanding of human experience. Another powerful benefit comes from discovering unexpected interests. When you explore only what you already like, your world remains small. When you explore what you don't yet understand, you uncover hidden passions. These discoveries can reshape your direction in life. A subject you never considered before might ignite deep motivation within you. A concept you assumed was irrelevant might become a cornerstone of your personal or professional growth. Curiosity is often found in places you least expect. By exploring diverse topics, you give yourself access to new possibilities and potential paths that could transform your future. Expanding your knowledge base also improves problem solving. Many problems become easier when approached from a different angle. Learning about fields outside your comfort zone gives you alternative frameworks to analyze situations. Instead of relying on the same mental tools repeatedly, you develop the ability to look at a challenge through multiple lenses. This multidimensional approach reveals solutions that would remain hidden to someone with a narrow focus. The broader your intellectual foundation, the more capable you become at finding answers when others feel stuck. Exploring diverse topics also strengthens self-awareness. Each subject you encounter reflects something about the world, and in understanding the world, you learn more about yourself. You discover your biases, preferences, strengths, and weaknesses. You learn what excites you, what frustrates you, what inspires you, and what challenges you. This heightened awareness helps you make more aligned choices. When you understand yourself better, you invest your time more wisely and pursue goals that genuinely resonate with your values and potential. A wider range of topics also strengthens your communication skills. The more you learn, the more confidently you speak, write, and express your ideas. You gain the ability to join conversations you once felt unprepared for. You understand references that previously went over your head. Your perspective becomes richer, and your ability to contribute meaningfully increases. This confidence opens doors socially and professionally. People naturally gravitate toward those who speak with clarity and insight, and diverse learning equips you to engage with depth and authenticity. Broad learning also enriches your emotional life. Subjects like art, music, literature, and philosophy deepen your inner world. They teach you to see beauty where others might overlook it. They give you language to express emotions you didn't know how to articulate. They help you understand the subtleties of human experience. This emotional depth strengthens your relationships, enhances your appreciation for life, and cultivates a sense of fulfillment that emerges from understanding life's complexities. Expanding your thinking through diverse topics becomes a lifelong practice that shapes your identity. It transforms your mind into a dynamic, resilient, and curious engine capable of adapting to any challenge. It gives you confidence, creativity, empathy, and wisdom. It elevates your conversations, strengthens your decisions, and deepens your understanding of the world. Each new subject becomes another strand woven into the tapestry of your mind, enriching your perspective and giving you a more expansive view of life. When you embrace learning beyond your usual boundaries, you don't just gather information, you grow into a more capable, more thoughtful, and more powerful version of yourself. Number 8. Apply knowledge immediately for mastery. Knowledge becomes transformative only when it moves from theory into action. Most people gather information endlessly, hoping that understanding alone will reshape their lives. Yet real mastery begins the moment you apply what you've learned in the smallest, simplest form. Ideas remain hollow until they are tested through experience. Action gives knowledge weight, texture, and meaning. It exposes what works, what needs adjustment, and what requires deeper understanding. Applying knowledge immediately prevents it from fading into memory, turning it instead into a living skill that grows with every attempt you make. The sooner you take a concept from mind to practice, the faster it becomes part of your identity. Understanding deepens when you convert a lesson into behavior. Reading about communication won't sharpen your voice until you have a real conversation where you put the principles into motion. Learning about discipline won't strengthen your willpower until you complete a task you once delayed. Studying philosophy won't bring you clarity until you face a situation that tests your perspective. Knowledge becomes powerful only when it interacts with the world. Every time you apply something you've learned, you reinforce the neural pathways that make that skill easier to repeat. Action solidifies learning in a way that passive consumption never can. Applying knowledge immediately also reduces hesitation. When you delay using what you've learned, the mind creates doubt. Excuses appear. You begin to tell yourself you're not ready, you don't know enough, or you need more preparation. This hesitation weakens momentum and creates a gap between intention and execution. By acting right away, sometimes even before you feel fully prepared, you interrupt the cycle of overthinking. You give yourself permission to learn through doing, which is the most natural and effective form of mastery. Small steps taken early prevent procrastination from taking root. Immediate application creates clarity. Concepts that feel complicated in your mind become simpler when you use them in real situations. You see how theories unfold in practice, where they fit, and how they can be adjusted to match your personal style. This clarity builds confidence. The more you apply knowledge, the more you trust yourself. You start to rely less on external guidance and more on your internal understanding. Confidence creates a positive feedback loop. Action produces clarity, clarity boosts confidence, and confidence encourages more action. This loop accelerates mastery far faster than studying alone. Another advantage of applying knowledge immediately is that it exposes your blind spots. When learning stays theoretical, you often assume you understand everything clearly. But when you put it into practice, you discover the areas where your understanding is incomplete. These discoveries are valuable. They guide you toward deeper study and help you refine your skills. Mistakes become mentors. They reveal what needs improvement with precision. Each attempt teaches you something that no book or lecture could teach on its own. You gain a more honest picture of your abilities, which allows you to grow with intention instead of guessing where to improve. Using knowledge right away also strengthens memory. The brain retains information more effectively when it is used, not merely observed. When you apply a concept shortly after learning it, you give your mind a reason to store it. Application signals importance. It tells your brain that this information matters in your daily life. As a result, the knowledge becomes easier to recall, and each repetition strengthens the foundation. This process creates a durable form of learning that lasts far longer than passive reading or listening ever could. Immediate application also teaches you adaptability. When you use knowledge in real situations, you encounter variables that theory cannot fully predict. You learn to adjust your methods, respond to unexpected challenges, and refine your approach based on results. This adaptability is the essence of mastery. Experts are not defined by how much they know, but by how flexible they are when applying what they know. They can adjust, pivot, and respond because they have practiced in a variety of contexts. Applying knowledge early gives you this skill naturally. One of the greatest benefits of using knowledge immediately is the momentum it creates. Action generates energy. Even a small step forward produces a sense of progress that fuels further effort. This momentum makes learning enjoyable and encourages consistency. Instead of waiting for motivation, you create it through movement. This shift transforms your relationship with learning. It becomes interactive, dynamic, and engaging rather than passive and repetitive. Each day becomes an opportunity to strengthen a skill, deepen understanding, and move one step closer to mastery. Applying knowledge quickly also prevents information overload. The modern world delivers more information than any person can absorb. Without immediate application, you risk becoming a collector of ideas instead of a practitioner. When you use information as you learn it, you filter out what is truly useful. You discover which ideas align with your goals and which ones don't. This filtering process keeps your learning intentional and grounded. Instead of drowning in endless content, you build a focused path shaped by practical experience. Another powerful result of immediate application is the sense of ownership it creates. When you take action based on what you've learned, the knowledge becomes yours. It moves from being someone else's idea to becoming part of your lived experience. This ownership strengthens your commitment to growth. You feel responsible for your progress because it comes from your efforts, not just your intentions. This sense of responsibility pushes you to learn more, apply more, and refine more. Mastery becomes a personal journey rather than a distant dream. Immediate application also sharpens your decision-making. Every time you use new knowledge, you train your mind to evaluate situations with more awareness. You become more observant, noticing details you previously overlooked. You begin to see patterns in your behavior, your environment, and the results you achieve. This awareness allows you to make better choices. With each application, your ability to judge situations grows sharper. Over time, you develop a calm and steady confidence rooted in real experience rather than speculation. Using knowledge without delay also strengthens discipline. Discipline is formed through repeated action, not through intention alone. Each time you apply what you've learned, no matter how small the action, you practice discipline. This repeated practice builds the inner strength required to stay committed to your growth. Discipline becomes easier because it is integrated into your daily habits. It becomes something you live, not something you force. This natural discipline accelerates mastery because it ensures consistent application without relying on fleeting motivation. Immediate application also deepens your connection to the learning process. Instead of feeling distant from what you study, you feel actively involved. Each concept becomes part of your unfolding journey. This involvement creates meaning. Learning stops being an abstract activity and becomes a practical tool for shaping your life. This deep sense of meaning strengthens your commitment and encourages long-term curiosity. You begin to appreciate each lesson for how it helps you grow, not just for the information it provides. Applying knowledge quickly transforms learning from an intellectual exercise into a path of action and self-mastery. It sharpens your understanding, strengthens your memory, exposes your gaps, and builds confidence. It accelerates growth by creating immediate feedback and giving your mind the clarity it needs to improve. When you make a habit of using what you learn right away, you turn knowledge into a practical force that reshapes your mind, your behavior, and your future. Real mastery comes not from how much you know, but from how consistently you act on what you learn. Number 9. Track progress to reinforce learning. Tracking your learning progress creates a powerful sense of direction, giving every study session a purpose instead of letting your efforts fade into scattered activity. When you commit to monitoring what you're doing, you begin to notice details that would otherwise slip by unnoticed. How long certain concepts take to grasp, which subjects energize you, which skills feel stuck, and where your understanding expands with surprising ease. This awareness turns learning from a random sequence of inputs into a structured, evolving journey, where each step builds naturally on the last. Progress tracking is not about judging yourself, it is about understanding yourself as a learner and building a system that supports your growth with clarity and intention. One of the most powerful benefits of tracking your progress is the way it strengthens focus. When you know exactly what you learned yesterday, you immediately know what today requires. There is no hesitation, no wandering through unnecessary materials, no decision fatigue that stops you before you begin. Your record becomes a map, and this map removes friction. Instead of debating what to do, you simply continue from where you left off. This continuity compounds learning faster than motivation ever could, because consistency is built into the structure itself. Learning becomes natural, almost automatic, because your progress log guides you forward without emotional strain. As you record what you are learning, patterns begin to appear. You might notice that certain skills only improve when you practice in short, frequent sessions. Another subject may require longer stretches of uninterrupted time. Some ideas stick easily when you teach them to someone else, while others stay foggy until you write them out with full explanations. These observations are invaluable because they reveal your personal learning rhythm, something that no generic study advice can teach you. When you understand how your brain absorbs information best, you can design your entire learning process around your strengths instead of fighting your weaknesses. Progress tracking in this sense becomes a form of self-knowledge. The act of measuring progress also reinforces memory. Each time you review what you've learned, even briefly, you strengthen the neural pathways connected to that information. This makes the knowledge easier to retrieve and combine with future insights. Reviewing your notes, summaries, or completed tasks reminds your brain that this information matters, prompting it to store the material more securely. Over time, this simple habit builds an internal bank of knowledge that becomes effortless to recall, not because you repeated it endlessly, but because you stayed consistently connected to your growing archive. Tracking progress also fuels motivation in a unique way. Many people believe motivation appears before action, but in the learning process, the opposite is usually true. Motivation grows from seeing visible evidence of improvement. When you look back and see a list of books you've finished, concepts you've cracked, skills you've practiced, and breakthroughs you've captured, your mind naturally wants to keep going. It becomes easier to push through the difficult phases because you have proof that your efforts lead somewhere meaningful. Progress becomes momentum, and momentum becomes confidence. Another important advantage of tracking progress is how it clarifies which learning methods actually work for you. People often spend months consuming content without wondering whether their approach is effective. When you track your results, however, you begin to notice what produces growth and what produces stagnation. You might discover that watching long videos gives you surface-level knowledge, but little retention, while short reading sessions paired with brief written reflections produce deeper understanding. You may find that audiobooks help you grasp big ideas quickly, but hands-on practice is what cements the concepts. Tracking removes guesswork. It reveals the truth of your learning habits with uncomfortable honesty, but empowering clarity. Progress tracking can take many forms, and the method you choose should feel natural, not burdensome. Some people prefer digital dashboards with goals, timelines, and checklists. Others enjoy simple written logs that record what they learned each day. Some track through journaling, capturing reflections, doubts, questions, and insights. Others use voice notes or short summaries after each session. The format matters far less than the consistency. What makes tracking effective is the daily practice of capturing what you did, what you understood, where you struggled, and what you plan for tomorrow. The most transformative aspect of progress tracking is how it strengthens personal accountability. When you record your learning journey in your own words, you create a visible record of commitment. It becomes harder to skip days mindlessly, harder to drift away from your goals, harder to pretend that you're making progress when you aren't. This accountability is gentle but firm. You're not judging yourself, you're simply documenting reality. And that honesty becomes a powerful motivator to keep learning with integrity. To elevate the process even further, you can periodically review your entire progress log. Weekly reviews help you recalibrate your efforts, identify blind spots, and celebrate meaningful improvements. Monthly reviews help you refine your long-term vision, what you still want to master, which skills should be prioritized, which ideas demand deeper exploration, and which topics no longer serve your growth. This long-view reflection transforms your learning into a strategic journey rather than an unfocused pursuit. Progress tracking also expands your ambitions. The more you learn, the more you realize what's possible. As the record grows, your beliefs shift. You stop thinking of yourself as someone trying to improve and start seeing yourself as someone who grows consistently by choice. The identity shift is subtle but profound. You begin to expect progress from yourself. You begin to treat learning as a lifestyle rather than a task. You develop an inner standard that refuses stagnation. This mindset is one of the most valuable results of tracking your learning journey. Ultimately, tracking progress reinforces your learning because it creates a living archive of your growth, a guide for your future steps, and a source of motivation that deepens with time. It transforms daily education from isolated moments into a connected story where every chapter builds on the last. The process connects your past effort with your present awareness and your future goals, creating a continuous cycle of self-improvement grounded in clarity, honesty, and intention. Number 10. Protect consistency with simple habits. Consistency thrives when the habits supporting it are simple enough to repeat without forcing yourself into constant negotiations or emotional debates. When you design your learning routine around small actions that fit naturally into your daily rhythm, you remove the obstacles that usually interrupt progress. Simple habits don't rely on inspiration or perfect circumstances. They rely on structure, and structure creates a stable foundation that protects your growth even on days when your energy is low, your schedule is chaotic, or your motivation feels distant. Mastering this principle can turn learning from an occasional effort into a dependable part of your identity. The secret behind simple habits is that they eliminate unnecessary friction. Many people assume they must create impressive, time-consuming routines to achieve real progress, but the truth is that complicated systems collapse quickly when life becomes unpredictable. Simple habits survive unpredictability. They survive stress, fatigue, and unexpected responsibilities. A habit that takes only a few minutes still moves you forward, even when you can't manage a long session. And when you maintain the habit itself, the momentum stays alive. This protects consistency by keeping the chain unbroken, allowing you to return to deeper learning whenever conditions improve. One of the most powerful simple habits for lifelong learning is setting aside a brief, predictable block of time daily, something short enough that you can complete it even during your busiest moments. This could be 5 minutes of reading, 10 minutes of listening to an audiobook, or a quick review of something you learned earlier. The point is not the size, it is the daily presence of the habit. Once you build this anchor, it becomes the minimum that ensures your identity as a learner never drifts away. It signals to your mind every single day that growth matters to you. Another habit that protects consistency is reducing decision-making around your learning routine. When you decide in advance what you will study, when you will do it, and how long you will commit, you prevent hesitation from interrupting your progress. This clarity removes the mental tug-of-war that often drains energy before you even begin. You simply follow the path already created, turning learning into a predictable part of your day instead of something left to impulse. The fewer decisions involved, the more likely you are to maintain the habit. Creating a structured environment also strengthens consistency. This doesn't require an elaborate setup, just a designated spot, tool, or trigger that signals learning time. Maybe you keep your audiobook app open, your notes ready, or a specific chair reserved for reading. These environmental cues tell your brain what to do before you consciously think about it. Over time, the cue and the habit become linked automatically. This reduces the mental effort needed to start, and anything that reduces effort helps consistency last longer. Simple habits also protect consistency by lowering emotional resistance. Much of the struggle around learning is not intellectual, it is emotional. People avoid studying because they anticipate frustration, confusion, boredom, or pressure. But when your habits are easy and lightweight, resistance fades. You stop associating learning with stress and start associating it with manageable steps. This emotional shift is subtle but incredibly powerful, because your mind stops building excuses. A small habit is far easier to approach than a demanding routine that feels like a burden. One overlooked strategy for protecting consistency is pairing habits together. When you attach your learning habit to something you already do, morning coffee, commuting, lunch break, or bedtime, you create a natural link that makes consistency almost automatic. Habit pairing reduces forgetfulness, eliminates randomness, and reinforces routine with minimal effort. Over time, your brain treats learning as part of an established sequence, strengthening repetition without conscious effort. Another simple habit that reinforces consistency is keeping a brief record of what you completed each day. Just a sentence, a bullet point, or a timestamp. This small act doesn't just track progress, it reinforces your identity as someone who learns daily. Seeing those entries accumulate creates a sense of continuity that is difficult to break. When you look back and see days of steady effort, you naturally want to protect the streak. This psychological effect keeps you engaged even when motivation is low, because you don't want to undo what you've already built. You can protect your consistencies even further by eliminating unnecessary ambitions from your daily routine. Many learners undermine themselves by trying to do too much all at once, finishing books overnight, mastering topics instantly, or studying for hours without rest. Ambition is valuable, but it becomes harmful when it overwhelms your capacity. Simple habits allow you to grow at a sustainable pace. When you keep your expectations realistic, you prevent burnout and frustration from interrupting your long-term progress. Maintaining consistency also requires flexibility. Even with simple habits, you will encounter days when your schedule shifts or unexpected responsibilities arise. Instead of abandoning the habit entirely, create a minimum fallback version, something so small that you can complete it under almost any conditions. This could be a single paragraph, 1 minute of reviewing notes, or a short reflection. Completing this fallback habit keeps your routine alive and protects your long-term pattern from collapsing. Flexibility doesn't weaken consistency, it preserves it. Another important habit is preparing your materials in advance. Having everything ready, your book, your playlist, your notes, your tools, removes delays that often derail the routine. When everything is accessible, learning becomes frictionless. This small act of preparation can transform the entire experience, because it allows you to start immediately without searching, setting up, or reorganizing. Simple preparation is a multiplier for consistency. You can reinforce your habits by celebrating completion, even in small ways. Positive reinforcement creates a psychological reward loop, making the habit feel satisfying instead of tedious. A moment of acknowledgement is enough. Checking a box, smiling at your progress, or giving yourself credit for showing up. These micro-rewards turn repetition into a pleasant experience, making your brain more eager to return tomorrow. Habit strength grows when the completion feels rewarding, not obligatory. Maintaining consistency also depends on protecting your energy. When your life is filled with unnecessary distractions, your mental resources become scattered, making it harder to maintain habits. Simple habits allow you to stay focused without feeling overwhelmed. You can also reinforce them by minimizing low-value activities that drain your attention. Reducing noise creates space for clarity, and clarity helps habits remain steady. Over time, these simple habits merge into a powerful system that keeps your learning journey alive. You become someone who shows up reliably, someone who doesn't depend on motivation, someone who doesn't collapse under stress or setbacks. Your progress accelerates not because you work harder, but because you work steadily. The strength of your habits becomes the backbone of your growth. Simplicity makes consistency possible, and consistency makes mastery inevitable. By protecting your learning routine with simple habits, you create a lifestyle that supports constant improvement. Your daily actions become seeds that accumulate into knowledge, skills, and confidence. You no longer chase progress, You attract it through the quiet power of repetition. Each small habit becomes a promise you keep with yourself, and these promises kept day after day shape the kind of person you become.